So you're looking to craft that best in slot gear in New World. Well, this video is going to help you narrow down how you need to craft those pieces of gear. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to try to help you craft that best in slot piece of gear. Now, I've recorded this a couple times, but I had to turn the volume off in game because people keep playing music. But let's talk a little bit about how to craft it. First, your weapon. Now, we're going to start talking about what perks can and can't roll with each other. And there's going to be a little bit of confusing part, which we're going to hopefully explain. But for the most part, people believed that there's essentially a perk pool. Once you pull a perk out of that perk pool, you cannot roll anything else in that perk pool, which I'm going to kind of debunk right here. But for the most part, it kind of holds true. So we're looking at a weapon here, and we have essentially Vicious, Keenly Empowered, and Keen. This is kind of a very generic version of a best in slot piece of gear. Some people think this is best in slot, some people don't. Okay, it's neither here nor there. We're not really debating what's considered best in slot. This server has, or at least this game has, very skewed versions of what they believe best in slot to be. Best in slot on this server basically means pretty damn good piece of gear. But we're going to talk about how we would go about rolling this. Now, the first thing that I would say, which is very unfortunate, is you see here, Keenly Empowered. Currently, we cannot choose this as a perk to roll. If so, I would actually tell you almost 100% of the time, we're going to roll Keenly Empowered unless there's one specific thing, which we'll talk about here in a second. But the fact that you can't roll it right now means we're not going to be able to pick it, which is unfortunate because this would actually make our lives a lot easier. Why is that? Because let's go ahead and take Keen off here, because Keen essentially, I haven't found another perk that can't roll with Keen. So we're going to take that out. I'm sure there are, but I haven't found them yet, which means there's probably not that many. We're going to go up here to Keenly Empowered. With Keenly Empowered, the stuff that we cannot roll with it are things like Keenly Jagged, Keenly Fortified, Keen Speed, Keen Tondo King, that's a weapon perk. But I think the Leeching ones as well, we cannot roll Leeching with Keenly Empowered. Where are they at here? I just passed them. Leeching. We can't go Leeching. I think this is, that's on your ring or something like that. But we can't get some of the Leeching perks with it. So we actually have a decent amount we can actually cancel off by picking Keenly Empowered. Like I said, Keen doesn't really cancel anything off, or at least block anything. So we'd want to go Keenly Empowered. But unfortunately, we cannot craft it. So I want to get that out of the way really quickly. Now, I want to talk about sort of the weird interaction. So we already know what Keenly Empowered can roll, so we're not worried about that. So let's go to Vicious, right? So the one weird thing about Vicious, as you can see here, with Vicious, you cannot roll Enchanted. You cannot roll Rogue. You cannot roll, oh, went past it. Any of the Trenchant or the Thwartings. Plus, you cannot roll Vorpal. Now, the one weird part about this is if we go Vorpal, we can actually go up here to Enchanted, and we can roll Vorpal and Enchanted. Now, this is where I'm debunking the theory that there's essentially a bag of perks, and then you pull one out, and if you get one from that perk, you can't roll another one, because as you can see here, we can roll Vorpal and Enchanted, but we can't roll Vorpal and Vicious. So what I believe is happening here is it's either a miscode, or they just make it to where, because we have Vorpal, which is essentially a crit damage modifier, we cannot have another crit damage modifier. Now, we could do Rogue, but there's no weapons that can even roll Rogue and Vorpal, because the weapons that can roll Vorpal can't roll Rogue, and the ones that can roll Rogue can't roll Vorpal. Because they're essentially the same thing, just one's a backstab and one's a headshot. But what I think is happening here, because this is a crit damage, and essentially Vorpal and Rogue are crit damages as well, you can't roll them together. Ironically, you can roll Enchanted Vorpal, but you can't roll Enchanted Rogue, which kind of debunks my theory. Now, you're gonna be like, Parfax, there are weapons in the game that actually have some of this, and I know, I understand it. There's muskets and bows that are gonna break this, but they are legendary, but we still can't craft them. They are just legendary in the world, and you can get them, and that's the reason why some of them are best in slot, because they have perks on them that you just can't get otherwise. Well, I guess Vorpal and Enchanted, obviously, like, we can craft it. But for instance, I believe the bow from Laz has what Keen, Vicious, Enchanted on it, I believe are its perks, which we know we can't roll. I believe the reason is because Vicious is not supposed to be in the same category as Enchanted. I think Vicious, Vorpal, and Rogue are going to be supposed to be in their same category, and then Enchanted, the Thordins, and the Trenches are in their own category, but somehow the coding got mixed up. I'm not sure on that, but as of right now, that's the way it is. Now, having said that, we can use that to our advantage. Like I said, if we're trying to go Enchant, or if we're trying to go Keenly Empowered, Keen Vicious, what we can do, we have basically two different options. One, we know we can't roll Keenly Empowered, so that's off the table. And two, we're either going to roll Keen or Vicious. Now, here's the two scenarios where you're going to roll one of the two. First, if you're just going to want a decent weapon, but you want to go real more RNG heavy, you're going to go with Keen. Keen is going to open your thing. You open it up to every single perk in the game. You're going to have the ability to get Thordin Counter, Thordin Ren, Vicious, Enchanted. You're going to have all those. But that really doesn't help us craft our best in slot weapon. The better option is to actually roll Vicious. Now, I know Enchanted's very good, and you know, Thordin Strikes and Vorpal and Rogue, depending on which one, they're actually all really good. But by rolling Vicious, we actually cancel out a lot of these different perks. That is a good and a bad thing, considering a lot of them are good. Like, we do like the fully charged heavy attacks heal the player for 10 to 28% of damage dealt, depending on the weapon that you're doing. That can be a really good perk on, let's say, a Great Axe. That's insane. But we also can roll things like Thordin Counter, 5 to 14% additional damage against targets with active grit. Honestly, not a great perk. It can be useful, especially against Great Axe users and stuff like that, or strength users in general, but maybe not a perk you really want. And by rolling Vicious, if we're strictly going for our best in slot, this is what we're going to roll. And this is why it's so incredibly bad that we can't roll Keenly Empowered, because Keenly Empowered allows us to roll Keen and every single one of these was still blocking out a bunch of really bad perks. But if you don't want to roll Vicious, if you're okay with rolling all those, you just slap Keen on it and you go at it. You do want to make sure that you do look at the perks you want to go. Come in here. This is the best way I found to do it. Pick exactly which one of your perks and then kind of go from there. There's some more perks on here that we didn't quite go over, but that is a video for another day of which ones don't roll together. But the best thing to do is to come on here, select your perks until we can actually get a website down that actually has what you're looking, what each individual perk can roll with each one, and what's the best way to craft it. We're going to have to use the game mechanics as they are right now. Unfortunately, it is the reason why weapons are so incredibly overpriced, because it is so incredibly hard to actually roll your best in slot because of, and we're going to talk about the armor thing here in a second, the best way to roll a piece of gear is to actually roll your weapon perk on it, as in like your slowing tether and stuff like that. But on your weapons, you never want those. So anytime a weapon rolls with one of these, it essentially degrades the item. It makes it worse. I know some people will still try to sell their Vorpal blades on their Void Gauntlets, but realistically, anytime your weapon has a perk on it, other than a shield, there are some cases for your shield to have a perk to be the best in slot. It really makes the value of that item go down. So that's unfortunate, but still not absolutely terrible. So Keen if you're going to be very RNG heavy, but if you really want that best slot piece of gear, if you do Vicious, it is going to, or Enchanted or Vorpal or whatever, it is going to really cancel out a lot of your different weapons. Now, having said that, let's talk a little bit about armor. So let's go here, and we're going to have basically two ways to craft armor. Now, a lot of these ways are known, but I want to get them out there and tell you why they're the best way to craft them. So let's go to head armor. It doesn't really matter what we're going for. And typically, everybody wants Resilient. Down here, Resilient. Oh, I went past it. Learn how to spell Resilient. Let's just do Refreshing. We'll, man, just keep scrolling way past everything you're looking for. Refreshing and a perk. Let's just look at the first perk we find. Mending Infected Throw, which you will never want, but let's pick it anyway. So we want Refreshing, Resilient, and a perk on our piece of gear, because like I said, you definitely want the perks on your gear. Now, in order to get this roll, there's two ways to do it. One is what most people on this server do, which is they roll Con, they'll roll Resilient, and they just take a gamble and roll the piece of gear and hope it comes out nice. Now, doing this is the best way to probably make money. But if you are crafting your piece of gear for yourself, this is by far the way you do not want to do it. The only way I am rolling resilient with a trait on it on my armor is if I have all my gear with all the weapon perks on it that I need, because of what I'm about to talk about, which is we're going to try to block a lot of the different perks. The best way and the most efficient way to block perks is by picking a perk on your armor. Because if you roll a legendary with a perk that you suggested, so for instance, I rolled a pair of boots with poison shot on them. I rolled a dex pair of boots. It went legendary and it rolled 2 non-weapon perks on them. There are so little amount of actually bad rolls you can get. The worst thing that can happen is you get like the trait lucks, right? The minings and stuff like that. That's like the best, that's like the worst thing you can get on there is the trade skill perks. As long as you don't land a trade skill perk, if you roll a legendary with a good weapon perk, it actually basically makes sure you guarantee you're just gonna make a big chunk of money on it. Because there's so many good defensive perks or even offensive perks. Like for instance, there's 3 different refreshings. There's a bunch of different wards which are gonna be good here in the next patch. You have resilient. You have different aversions. You have so many good perks that you can roll on your gear that aren't revolved around your weapon perks, that if you block off all the other weapon perks with the weapon perk you're looking for, it is going to significantly increase the chance that you get a absolutely insane piece of gear. Because even if you don't roll resilient on it, you can roll with the perk and you can get like an aversion. Like I have physical aversion on mine, which means musket users and bow users do a lot less damage to me. So, well, it's not quite best in slot, because if I could just swap it out with refreshing or with resilient, it would be my best in slot piece of gear. But unfortunately, I got physical aversion, which is still insane. If I would have rolled resilient on it, I might have got resilient and refreshing evasion like I did on my bow build, but I might have got mending infected throw like right here. And then the piece of gear is so significantly devalued that it's kind of just not worth it. So there's still something to be said about, if you want to make money, rolling one of the most valuable perks like Ferocious Blade or Leeching Path of Destiny, or some of these big pieces of these big trait items everybody's looking for. Roll them on your gear, because if you hit legendary, it is such a higher chance that the piece of gear is going to be absolutely cracked out than if you just roll resilient and then you're basically just, it's like rolling keen on your weapon. You're like, okay, we're going to roll keen on my weapon because it's probably one of the better perks to roll on it. But I'm opening myself up to a lot of options, but I'm also opening myself up to a lot of bad options. So when you're rolling your gear, make sure you're slapping the perk that you're looking for. And honestly, on my server, don't roll con, because first off, there's so much con gear in the market, it makes me sick. I would personally rather not have con gear. I want my dex gear, I want my int gear. If I want to go glass cannon, I want to go glass cannon. I don't want to have to put con on it. I don't have to worry about how much con I have. I have pieces of con jewelry and stuff like that, and I'm trying to roll it into a musket build, and guess what? I'm gonna have to re-roll gear because I have too much con. Now, is everybody gonna go glass cannon? No. But even if you want to go a 50 con build, it's really hard, because a lot of the pieces of gear that people are running, they're actually putting a lot of con on there, and it makes it a lot harder to actually get the piece of gear that you need. So don't roll con unless you're just going for money and you really just want to gamble. Don't roll resilient unless you're just trying to, you know, RNG your way to the best in slot piece of gear for some random build that you don't really care about. Roll the perk on your gear, roll whatever attribute you want, and then you can thank me later when you craft that absolutely cracked out item. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know essentially it was just me sitting here talking. We did a lot of staring at the screen, but I wanted to kind of give you guys the lowdown on how to craft your gear. It is something that I've learned over the period of time. It is a way we're going to save you a ton of coins in the game, and we're going to really narrow down the amount of options you can have while crafting your gear. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in a tournament.